Oh boy, yeah, it's been a minute, isn't it? Yeah. So this is just gonna be kind of a generic sort of like, hey, I'm still alive thing since I didn't upload for all of March. And I know that's a problem. First of all, sorry, I don't want that to be the case. But I'm here to explain like things are actually happening. So a couple different things that are going on all at once. For starters, I have like 7 different videos in progress right now, and oh my god, I wish I was joking, but I'm not. And I can even go through and show you guys what they're going to be, just because I wanted there to be transparency with like, hey, I'm actually doing stuff, and I'm not just like, thanks for the views and then taking off and not uploading for 3 months, taking a vacation or whatever, just because. No, I've actually been doing things. I'll literally show you. Here is the script for a topography video that was made in conjunction with the new player experience video, which is what I was currently making, and then I got to the kind of token section on topography, wherever that is in this whole script here, and was like, oh my god, this is kind of a dumpster fire. So that was a thing. The reason this is also a thing is because we're making this, which is rebalancing every single tank in the entire game. Literally all of them. So I only asked people about tier like 7 to 10 because I have a pretty fair grasp on tier 6. But tier 1 to 4 needs a huge overhaul at this point, for various different reasons. So it's a lot of ideas flying around all at once. Because it started with this video, and then I was like, okay, I got tier 1 to 6, but mostly tier 4. And then made that video script, recorded all of it, and then realized, oh my god, topography is kind of a dumpster fire in various different ways. So then making a video about topography as well. So it's kind of just mild ADHD brain just thinking of something and starting it halfway through a different project over and over again. In addition to those, you probably saw this tab up here as well, which is recon maps, which I also have started a script on, but I haven't gotten to finish it yet. Because all of these fall under all of this. And I'll zoom in here just so we can read what's actually going on here without having to make me zoom in. Now, you probably just put me on in the background as a podcast while you're at work or something, which I'm okay with, because people do that at Twitch all the time. When I'm on Twitch, everybody just puts me on in the background for their podcast. So they'll learn stuff for World of Tanks trivia night or something. I'll take it. Either way, we have pretty much all of these different things to talk about that I'm making videos of. And I just keep getting stuck with various things because a lot of these are very, very opinionated. And I also recognize that people really aren't going to agree with some of it. And it isn't that I want to make a video everybody agrees with, because that doesn't feel like we're getting anywhere if we're all agreeing on one thing, unless it's obvious. Like, for example, +1, -1. I don't think there's almost anybody who thinks +2 is better than +1, strictly anyway. Then there's the other side of the coin where it's like, I'm fine with artillery in the game, it's just you need to do a couple things to it. Versus people who go full-on rabies mode as soon as you mention artillery and you can't even have a conversation about it. One of the comments on that artillery video was, I'm just glad there's a place where we can just talk about artillery and not have it get spiraled out of hand in 2 seconds. Or something along those lines. That was the goal of these videos. And so far, it's been the case every time. Problem is, I need to maintain that, and that's not easy. So I just wanted to make this just to show things are happening. There is progress, and we're actually getting fairly far down the list here in terms of tanks that are actually, being changed. Now, this is just to explain how this went, and I'll explain it again when this video comes out. I asked a handful of people to go through every tier 10, every tier 9, every tier 8, every tier 7, and just basically say if they think it's balanced, if they say it needs a buff, or if they think it needs a nerf. I'll then kind of go through and, like, for example, I asked Gazelle, Mimi, Max is a guy in the World of Tanks Discord. I was also using Scorpioni's index and skills index for tanks that they absolutely determine needs a buff or they think is in a very good place as is. I didn't really use it for nerfs because if they like a tank, I'm not going to say, oh, that means nerf it because it's too good. But if there's certain tanks where they're like very clearly expressing their distaste for it, I'll add it as a buff here. For example, Foch 155 is a good example. I went through with them, all these different tanks, and the verdict with some of them has come through buffing, nerfing, whatever. The tanks that we determined are balanced, for example here, 121, 114, every single person here voted that it was balanced. The verdict is that it's balanced, and I don't have to go through and look at it. The idea with that is to cut from 390 tanks, man, I wish that number was smaller, down to a more digestible figure of the tanks that actually need changing, so I don't have to worry about stuff like the E100, if that makes sense. I don't have to look at 390 tanks, I only have to look at like 245, I think, is the number we came back to at the bottom of the list here. Yeah, 248, because I've been adding a couple things from now and again. These are the number of tanks that we have left to change as of right now, and certain ones I don't really have any idea for. The other reason is because we'll get stuck on certain tanks and come back later. Good example of this would be going up to the heavy tanks, which I believe are up here. The Kirovitz 1. There's just literally nothing I can do to this thing to make this at all interesting while keeping it in a balanced state. It's an IS-3 with a flat upper plate. Which, by the way, that's literally what it is. It's a stock IS-3 turret. It's, I think, a 703 gun or an IS-3A gun on a 703 chassis. And that's it. It might not be exactly a stock IS-3A turret, or IS-3 turret, but you know what I mean. It's as generic of a tank as you can get. And unless we make the gun just hilariously better than the other ones, there's just not a lot we can do to it. Versus tanks like the ISM, where people have come through, and this is a public document, by the way, so you can come through and suggest changes to it. You do have to be logged into Google, and this will be in the description for you. But you can come through and leave balance changes on some of these tanks. For example, Callow is one of the best players on the EU server. Every time a tech tree line comes out, he marks them from bottom to top and doesn't move on to the next one until he marks the previous one. He has marked an ungodly amount of tanks, and I really, really wanted a second opinion from him because he's played a lot more tanks than I have. For example here, if we go to this, I've played, what's the number here? Right there. 493 vehicles. However, if we sort by battles, look at all the 2s and the 1s, like the 1s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like a lot of these tanks I only play a couple times. Or at least not that many times. Some tanks I thought I played more than I already have. For example, I thought I played the A46 more than 6 times. But I have not played, like, the T-34-3. I don't know if this is a great tank or not. And I can't really just look at the stats and determine if it is or not. The best example of this, by the way, was for the medium tanks. I changed it now. It's at the bottom, I think. Yeah, the A44 said, give it a full turret, which it already has a full turret. I just never see anyone point the gun over the back of the tank because it has no gun depression. So this is a pretty good example of why it's taking so long to do this project. Is because I'm one person. My opinions are going to vary wildly from what everybody else thinks, for the most part. And I'm going to think tanks should be better than other people might think they should be. Callow, why I mentioned him, is because he's marked probably more tanks than I've played. He's 3-marked something like 400 something vehicles, if I had to take a guess off the top of my head. I've played 490 and I've aced 240 of them. Now, that's a lot. Like, acing 245 tanks is not chump change. That's a pretty considerable number of tanks to ace. However, acing a tank and marking a tank is different. I don't like marking tanks. Some people do. And Callow has played a lot of these tanks enough to give an accurate opinion on them. For example, you can see various different notes. Anything with a little yellow tag like this has a comment on it like so. And just because someone leaves a comment doesn't mean I will take it, doesn't mean I won't take it. But either way, this is a public document where you can leave comments. Callow has left pretty much the exact kind of comments that I want people to leave. A very good example would be the Carnarvon Action X. I have no idea what to do to this thing. And Callow said, all it needs is better aiming time. And that's it. Tank doesn't need an overhaul, you know, whatever. I've never played this tank, and seeing a simple change like that, doesn't need more hit points, doesn't need to be faster, doesn't need this. If he says it just needs better aiming time, I know I can trust Callow's opinion that a 4/10 of a second aiming speed is not going to make the tank insane overnight. It'll just make it better, which is all it has to. Likewise, you can propose buffs, you can propose nerfs. Callow on certain tanks has said, I think the 110, like he'll give feedback on changes I've already made here. My idea here for the 110, make the entire upper plate 120 because only the front middle of it is 120, and then give it more engine power. I have not played the 110 in years. I've not played it since it got buffed, and apparently from everything I've seen, it's actually a pretty good tank now. I just looked at it and I thought this would make it a much better tank to play. Callow says it doesn't really need the extra engine power, so I'll just do that now and take the engine power out. And the comma, just because OCD. I don't have OCD, but everybody has a little bit of it, right? Callow's gone through a lot of these. He's marked a lot of these down, and I invite everybody else to do the same. You do have to be logged into Google for it, and I'm not going to care who's who. I've had various people comment on it. A lot of people have looked at this. This document is changing every hour of every day. Like, not every hour, but this document has gone through so many changes in the past. As you can imagine, with 258 tanks to go through, this document has changed over a dozen times easily, and more tanks are being added to it because we're adding tier 6s into the mix that also need some help. But I'm only one person. That's why I'm inviting everybody else to this. Certain things are obvious. For example, we know the T28 prototype is bad. How can we make it better? People can leave comments, say what they think, and then we'll all determine together what's good for these. Even really simple stuff. Like, for example, if we go down to the KV13, some of these that I remember just offhandedly are the ones that I've played the tank a lot and I know, what's wrong with it. For example, KV13. Add an option to mount a vertical stabilizer. Tank does not need anything else. It's a great tank. It's just the moving dispersions are absolutely horrible. Same story for the VK 3002, down here somewhere. This one, same story. We're at the stage in the game where this is really all tanks need. And oh no, it can't mount vert stabs in real life. I don't really think anyone cares at this point. Tanks have really bad dispersion and they can't really make it better without adding rotation mechanism, which is not the same thing. And turning faster can actually hurt your moving dispersions a lot more than it helps sometimes, which is why I don't run it on a couple of my tanks. Now, it's not going to be like, oh, you're running vert stabs, or you're not running vert stabs, you're running rotation mechanism over vert stabs, you're going to miss a lot more. It's not like that. But it doesn't help as much as it could if the tank already didn't turn that fast, if you know what I mean. But there's a lot of these tanks where all they need is just a little thing, and collectively, people have also decided that the tank might actually be fine as is. So once again, this is in the description. This is one of the 3, I say current projects, but the ones that I'm focusing on really hard. And I invite everybody to come and, comment on this. You're already logged into Google, probably, if you're watching this video, because you're watching it on YouTube, and guess who owns YouTube? So I invite everybody to come here, leave comments on different tanks. Please don't leave comments on all, like, the tier 10, 9, 8 tabs down here. You can, I just would like it to be in a more organized state down here. I'll still read them if you put them in here, but this is where it's very organized, is this long sheet here. So just keep that in mind. Anything in light blue, you can leave a comment on, but keep in mind Wargaming is changing them next patch as of when this video is coming out in like a week or so. So just keep that in mind. I could add them, like I could put Wargaming balance change and then add them there and just do that, but either way. And in case anyone was wondering, although probably no one was, why every change is in quotation marks is because if I try to put like Tornwagen, if I do plus add, it tries to do functions on Google spreadsheets. So if I put a quotation mark there, now I can add it and it won't do anything. But if I put just plus add, it's going to ask me for an equation and then it breaks. So that's why everything's in quotation marks. As for various other projects that are coming out, there is a couple other videos that are not related to this whole thing here, with all of these various videos that are going to be coming out. There is the recon one here, but there's various other ones that I also want to make. In addition to those, there's 2 other videos. One's a compilation of IS-7 games, I know, because that's never been uploaded to YouTube before. And also just a bunch of various different things that's happened in the past while. Something like that. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's just unfortunate that A, you guys don't get to see a lot of it, and B, I'm mildly a perfectionist. I don't want to put out a video that's like good enough. I want to make sure it's done. I want to make sure it's finished. I want to make sure people marginally agree on what is being represented to, at this point, thousands of people that watch these things and share them, which I love. But there's a lot of pressure now, so I'm just taking it all into account. Although I was tempted to upload a best of March video, and it was just going to be 5 seconds, like that one Code Bullet video that he made that one time. Yes, he really uploaded this. There's a lot going on though, and I just wanted to say like, hey, I'm not dead. So yeah, and also if you do want to actually help these videos go along faster, please do leave comments in that spreadsheet. You can also leave comments in the YouTube description as well, because A, it will help the algorithm, and B, I actually read those. Like if you comment like the tank and then what you think might be a good change for it, I read through YouTube comments. I'll see it. Just keep it realistic, at least moderately realistic. Don't say like, give this tank 5 more degrees of gun depression, or you can give it like 1 or 2, but don't give it like 5. Another common one that I want to explicitly point out, because I've seen people talk about it more than a couple times. I'm not going to change the models of things. People keep saying like, for these Italian tank destroyers, all you would have to do to this tank is just take the cupola and then make it taller so people can hit it. I'm not going to do that, because A, it's cheap, and B, why? Like, the only tank that I would really consider that for, necessarily anyway, is the BZ-58, because I dislike how it plays at tier 7. I like the tank, but I dislike that the turret front is just not pennable for people at the same tier unless they load gold. This would be one of the only tanks where I'd think, like, make the turret front not really pennable, but then make the cupola actually like hittable and pennable and whatever. This is one of the only ones where I would think this, just because it's at a tier where I dislike wargaming making it what it is, rather than once you get to tier 9 or something, that's just par for the course at that point. I just don't like that being down at tier 7. So yeah, please no like changes to the model or something. Like, don't tell me to remove a cupola or add a cupola or add a ton of gun depression. You can ask me to add like 1 or 2, but please don't make it like 4 or above, because that's just unrealistic at that point. Also, don't like suggest a nerf because you hate a tank or something. Like, I still dislike a lot what the EBR 105 is able to do in this game. I always have, and I still do, even though I've played it 150 times at this point, almost. Yeah, 148 plus a handful of advances. I still dislike what this tank is able to do, and the only nerfs that I really proposed for it were nerfing the gun. Because I recognize, like, it's supposed to be a tank that goes 90. It's supposed to, you know, have no armor, have wheels. If you hit the wheels, you don't do anything. And if you make it not like that, then these things would be very annoying to even think about playing, which is not what we want either, as annoying as it is now. So, just as an example. Oh, and also, please don't suggest the removal of any tank, because the only tank I'm going to actually definitively remove in this whole video series is this one. I'm not even going to remove the BZ. We have ideas for it. And if you do too, then leave a comment. So anyway, yeah, I'm not dead. Oh, and if anyone was worried that, like, any health scare or something happened, no. I've just been busy making these, so I'm totally fine. Nothing went wrong and I almost died, and no, there's none of that. I've been very active on Twitch if you want to stop by and say hi, where if we've talked about this a lot already, so